Commander Vex 9 adjusted his third eye and stared at the tactical display with the kind of bewilderment typically reserved for watching someone try to eat soup with a fork. The human fleet had just done something so spectacularly stupid that his military academy training simply had no reference point for it. "Sir," his communications officer Zinth chirped from her station, her voice carrying that particular tone of disbelief that suggested reality had taken a holiday. "The humans are drawing lines." "Lines?" Vex 9's mandibles clicked in confusion. "What kind of lines? Formation patterns? Tactical grids?" "No, sir. Actual lines. In the dirt. On the planet's surface." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems and the distant sound of Vex 9's patience evaporating like water on a hot griddle. He had been commanding the 3rd Galactic Enforcement Fleet for over 200 rotations, had fought the crystalline hive minds of Sector 7, had negotiated peace with the tentacled merchants of the Outer Rim, and had even survived a diplomatic dinner with the gas-based entities from the Void Nebula. But humans were a special kind of headache. "Show me," he growled. The main screen flickered to life, displaying the surface of Kepler 442b, a modest little world that the humans had been terraforming for the past 50 standard years. The planet was nothing spectacular, just another blue-green marble in the vast cosmic jewelry box. But apparently, it had caught the attention of the Hegemony High Command, who had decided that humanity's expansion needed some adjustment. And there she was, a single human figure standing in what appeared to be a cleared patch of red dirt, drawing a line with her boot, just dragging her foot through the soil like a child playing in a sandbox. Vex 9's optical sensors zoomed in automatically, bringing the figure into sharp focus. The human was unremarkable by most standards. Medium height, brown hair pulled back in what his cultural database identified as a ponytail, wearing standard colonial work clothes. But something about her posture, the deliberate way she moved, sent a chill through Vex 9's exoskeleton that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature controls. "What's her designation?" he asked. Zinth's claws danced over her console. "Colony Administrator Elena Vasquez, age 37 standard years, former military engineer. No significant combat record." Former military, Vex 9 mused. That explains the posture. Below them, Elena Vasquez finished her line and stepped back to admire her work. It was perhaps 20 meters long, perfectly straight, carved into the red soil with the kind of precision that spoke of someone who had done this before. She dusted off her hands and looked up at the sky, directly at their fleet. Even through the tactical display, Vex 9 could swear she was looking right at him. "Sir," Navigation Officer Crix spoke up from his position, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface." "From the human?" "Yes, sir. Audio only." "Put it through." Static crackled through the bridge speakers, followed by a voice that was calm, pleasant, and absolutely terrifying in its complete lack of concern. "Hello there, Hegemony Fleet. Nice ships you've got. I'm Elena Vasquez, and I'd like to have a little chat with whoever's in charge up there." Vex 9 exchanged glances with his crew. The universal translators were working perfectly, but something about the human's tone suggested that translation might be the least of their problems. "This is Commander Vex 9 of the 3rd Galactic Enforcement Fleet. You are in violation of Hegemony expansion protocols. Evacuate this system immediately." A sound came through the speakers that his database identified as laughter. Not the nervous laughter of someone facing overwhelming odds, but the kind of amused chuckling typically reserved for watching small children try to arm wrestle. "Oh, that's adorable." Elena's voice carried a warmth that somehow made Vex 9's skin crawl. You know, Commander, I've been waiting for someone like you to show up. We've had such a peaceful 50 years here. I was starting to worry we'd been forgotten. The hegemony forgets nothing, human. You have 1 standard hour to begin evacuation procedures. Well, now that's where we have a little problem. Elena's voice remained cheerful, conversational. You see this line I just drew? This little scratch in the dirt? Vex 9 looked at the tactical display. The line was still there, looking as insignificant as ever. What about it? This line represents the boundary of the oldest empire in the galaxy, and I'm afraid you can't cross it. The bridge erupted in what could charitably be called chuckling. Weapons Officer Zalt's laugh sounded like grinding metal. The oldest empire? Human. Your species achieved interstellar flight less than 200 years ago. The hegemony has existed for over 50,000 years. Oh, I'm not talking about humanity, Elena replied, and something in her tone made the laughter die instantly. I'm talking about Earth. Silence. Vex 9's tactical computer began running analysis protocols, cross-referencing Elena's words with historical databases, xenoarchaeological records, and theoretical physics models. The results started flowing across his personal display, and with each line of data, his growing sense of unease transformed into something approaching panic. Impossible, he whispered. What's impossible, Commander? Elena's voice carried through the speakers like smoke through a ventilation system. That a little backwater world might have secrets your vast empire never bothered to investigate? That maybe, just maybe, humanity wasn't the first intelligence to call Earth home? The tactical computer finished its analysis and highlighted several concerning data points. Vex 9's training told him to disregard them as coincidences, but his instincts were screaming warnings that had kept him alive through a dozen conflicts. Zinth, run a deep scan on the planetary surface. Focus on archaeological markers, energy signatures, anything that doesn't match standard terraforming patterns. Yes, sir. Zinth's claws clicked rapidly over her controls. Sir, I'm detecting… This can't be right. What? Buried structures. Massive ones. The dating algorithms are… Commander, some of these readings suggest construction dates of over 200,000 years ago. Elena's laughter drifted through the speakers again. Getting warmer, aren't we? You know, your species has a saying about assumptions making fools of people. Though I suppose when you've conquered half the galaxy, it's easy to assume you know everything about the other half. Vex 9's mind raced through the implications. An ancient civilization on Earth, predating human spaceflight by millennia. Structures that had remained hidden through 50 years of human colonization. And now, this administrator woman was claiming they represented some kind of boundary. Even if what you're suggesting is true, Vex 9 said carefully, ancient ruins don't constitute a functioning empire. Don't they? Elena's voice carried a note of genuine curiosity. What exactly do you think makes an empire, Commander? Territory? Military might? The ability to project power across vast distances? All of those things. And what if I told you that the empire I represent has never lost territory? Never been successfully invaded? Has defensive capabilities that make your enforcement fleet look like angry insects buzzing around a mountain? Weapons Officer Zalt leaned forward in his harness. Sir, request permission to demonstrate the inadequacy of their defensive capabilities. Denied. Vex 9's voice carried more certainty than he felt. Something about this entire situation felt wrong, like walking into what appeared to be an empty room and sensing predators in the shadows. Smart choice, Commander. Elena's approval was somehow more unsettling than her earlier amusement. You know, I've been colony administrator here for 8 years. Do you know what the job typically involves? Infrastructure planning, resource allocation, mediating disputes between farming cooperatives. Pretty boring stuff. I imagine so. But about 6 months ago, something interesting happened. We were expanding the Eastern Agricultural District when our excavation equipment hit something that definitely wasn't supposed to be there. Something big. Something that had been waiting under our feet for a very, very long time. The tactical display updated with new sensor data. The buried structures weren't just large, they were enormous. A complex network of constructions that spanned the entire continent, all connected by what appeared to be some kind of energy distribution system. The thing about ancient civilizations, Elena continued, is that they tend to leave instructions, protocols, contingency plans for situations they couldn't handle personally, but thought their successors might encounter. Vex 9's blood temperature dropped several degrees. Successors? Oh yes, Commander. It turns out that when an ancient empire goes dormant, it doesn't necessarily go extinct. Sometimes it just waits, watches, prepares for the day when someone worthy enough to inherit their legacy shows up. And you're claiming humanity is worthy of this inheritance? Elena's laughter returned, but now it carried undertones that made Vex 9's damage control systems activate preemptively. Not humanity, Commander. Me. Specifically me. Turns out ancient empire management wasn't covered in my engineering coursework, but apparently I have a knack for it. The sensor displays updated again. Energy readings from the buried structures had increased by 300% in the last 60 seconds. Whatever Elena had activated down there, it was powering up. Sir, Zinth's voice carried a tremor of fear. I'm detecting massive energy buildups across the planetary surface. Power levels are... Sir, these readings don't make sense. How so? The energy output we're measuring exceeds theoretical maximums for any known technology, including our own. Elena's voice cut through the bridge chatter like a heated blade through ice. Gentlemen, ladies, and distinguished others, let me introduce you to the defensive grid of the Terran Protectorate. Please note that I said Protectorate, not Empire. We've had some time to think about better forms of government. The main display shifted to show a three-dimensional representation of Kepler 4.2b. Across its surface, thousands of points of light were activating in sequence, forming patterns that hurt to look at directly. The lights connected, forming geometric shapes that seemed to twist through dimensions that Vex 9's visual cortex insisted didn't exist. The Terran Protectorate, Elena continued, was established approximately 247,000 years ago by a species that valued intelligence, adaptability, and the long view of history over military conquest and resource extraction. They built their defensive systems to last. More importantly, they built them to learn. Learn what? Vex 9's voice came out as barely more than a whisper. How to identify and respond to threats, of course. And after studying your enforcement fleet for the past several hours, I'm afraid the system has reached some rather unfavorable conclusions about your intentions. The tactical display exploded with warnings. Every sensor on the ship was detecting energy signatures that shouldn't exist, weapon systems that violated half the laws of physics, and defensive capabilities that made the hegemony's most advanced fortifications look like children's toys. This is impossible, Weapons Officer Zalt muttered. No single planet could generate this kind of power output. You're absolutely right, Elena agreed cheerfully. No single planet could, but who said anything about a single planet? The long-range sensors activated automatically, expanding their view to encompass the entire system. What they revealed made every member of Vex 9's crew question their understanding of reality, physics, and the fundamental nature of space itself. Every planet in the system was lighting up. Every moon, asteroid, comet, and piece of space debris larger than a shuttlecraft was suddenly broadcasting energy signatures that registered as active defensive installations. The entire star system had transformed from a quiet colonial backwater into what could only be described as a fortress that used stellar mechanics as its basic building blocks. "Sweet ancestors of the void," Navigation Officer Crix whispered. "The Terran Protectorate," Elena explained in the same tone someone might use to discuss the weather, "never believed in putting all their eggs in one basket. When they went dormant, they didn't just hide on Earth. They integrated themselves into entire star systems, turning each one into a self-contained defensive network. We've had rather a lot of time to prepare for visitors like yourselves." Vex 9 stared at the display, watching as energy readings climbed to levels that his instruments insisted were physically impossible. His military training warred with his survival instincts, and for the first time in his career, survival was winning. "What do you want?" he asked. "What I want, Commander, is very simple. I want you to turn around, fly back to hegemony space, and deliver a message to your high command. Tell them that the boundary I just drew in the dirt isn't just a line on a single colony world. It's the edge of something that was here long before they started conquering galaxies, and will be here long after they're forgotten." "And if we refuse?" Elena's voice carried a note of genuine sadness. "Then the Terran Protectorate will demonstrate why it has never lost a war in 250,000 years. And, Commander, that demonstration won't be limited to this star system." The implications of her words settled over the bridge like a suffocating blanket. An empire that had remained hidden for millennia, defensive capabilities that spanned entire star systems, and a human administrator who spoke about ancient technologies like she was reading from a technical manual. "Sir," Zinth whispered, "incoming transmission from the Hegemony High Command. They're demanding a status report." Vex 9 looked at the tactical display one more time. The line Elena had drawn in the dirt was still there, 20 meters of disturbed soil that now represented the boundary between the known universe and something far older and more dangerous than anything in his experience. "Tell them," he said slowly, "that we've encountered an unexpected situation that requires immediate strategic reassessment." Elena's laughter echoed through the bridge. Speakers, one final time. "Diplomatic language for, we found something that scared us badly enough to run away, I assume? Don't worry, Commander. There's no shame in recognizing when you're outgunned. The smart ones always do." Admiral Corex Prime materialized on Vex 9's bridge via quantum transmission, his massive form crackling with residual energy from the transfer. The sight of the Hegemony's supreme military commander appearing in person meant one thing. Someone was about to have a very bad day. "Explain to me," Corex Prime's voice rumbled like tectonic plates shifting, "how a single human colony has my finest enforcement fleet requesting strategic reassessment." Vex 9's mandibles twitched nervously. "Sir, the situation is more complex than initial reports suggested." "Complex?" Corex Prime's forearms gestured at the tactical displays showing Elena's little scratch in the dirt. "A farm woman draws a line in soil, and you develop tactical paralysis? Perhaps I overestimated your capabilities, Commander." Before Vex 9 could respond, Elena's voice crackled through the communications array with the cheerfulness of someone announcing a neighborhood barbecue. "Oh my, another visitor. Admiral, I presume? Elena Vasquez, local representative of the Terran Protectorate. Pleasure to make your acquaintance. Corex Prime's optical array focused on the communication station with predatory intensity. Human, you will address me with proper military courtesy or face immediate consequences. Well, now, that's a bit rude, isn't it? I was being perfectly polite. But if you insist on formalities... Elena's tone shifted, becoming crisp and official. Admiral Corex Prime of the Hegemony Third Fleet, you are hereby notified that your vessels have entered protected space under the jurisdiction of the Terran Protectorate Defense Authority. State your business, or prepare to be escorted from the premises. The bridge fell silent, except for the sound of Corex Prime's breathing apparatus cycling through what Vex 9 recognized as barely controlled rage. Protectorate Defense Authority? Corex Prime's laugh sounded like grinding metal. Human, your pathetic little colony world doesn't even register on our strategic assessment charts. Funny thing about that, Elena replied. Your charts are apparently missing some rather important information. Zinth, sweetie, are you still monitoring those sensor readings? Zinth startled at being addressed directly. Yes, ma'am. Energy levels are still climbing. Excellent. Admiral, would you care to take a look at what my new job responsibilities include? The main display updated with new sensor data that made Corex Prime's confident posture evaporate, like atmosphere from a breached hull. The defensive grid wasn't just active now, it was evolving. Energy patterns were shifting, connecting across impossible distances, forming structures that existed in more dimensions than the hegemony's best physicists claimed were possible. Impossible fabrication, Corex Prime declared, but his voice lacked conviction. You know, Admiral, that's exactly what I said 6 months ago when I first got access to the Protectorate archives. This can't be real, I told myself. Ancient civilizations don't just leave behind instruction manuals for galaxy-spanning defensive networks. But apparently, they do. Elena's transmission was joined by visual feed, showing her standing next to what appeared to be a control interface that definitely hadn't been there during the initial survey. The device looked organic, crystalline, and technological all at once, pulsing with lights that hurt to look at directly. The Terran Protectorate, Elena continued, running her hand over controls that seemed to respond to her thoughts rather than touch, believed in what they called defensive sustainability. Why build weapons when you can build systems that make weapons irrelevant? Meaning what, exactly? Corex Prime demanded. Meaning, Admiral, that this defensive grid doesn't destroy invading fleets. It makes them not want to invade in the first place. Corex Prime's laugh was sharp and dismissive. Psychological warfare, fear tactics. The hegemony has conquered species that specialized in terror for millennia. Oh, this isn't fear, Admiral. This is education. The tactical displays suddenly filled with information that should have been classified at the highest levels of hegemony security. Fleet positions, supply lines, communication protocols, strategic weaknesses, personal files of command staff, economic projections, resource allocation models, and detailed analysis of every military campaign the hegemony had conducted in the past 1,000 years. How are you accessing this data? Vex 9 whispered. Well, Commander, it turns out that when you build a defensive network designed to last 250,000 years, you plan for technological advancement. The Protectorate's monitoring systems have been watching, learning, and cataloging every species that achieved interstellar capability since they went dormant. Elena's image smiled pleasantly, while tactical data continued streaming across every screen on the bridge. Did you know, Admiral, that the hegemony's expansion rate has decreased by 0.7% over the past century? Resource acquisition efficiency is down, administrative overhead is up, and your subject species satisfaction indices are approaching critical thresholds in 43 sectors? This information is classified beyond your clearance level, Corex Prime snarled. Was classified, Elena corrected. Past tense. You see, Admiral, the Protectorate didn't just build defensive systems. They built analytical frameworks designed to understand and predict the behavior of expansionist civilizations. Your entire empire has been a case study for the past 12,000 years. The implications hit Vex 9 like a meteor strike. You've been watching us, all of us, since before the hegemony existed. Oh yes, watching, learning, preparing. The Protectorate archives contain detailed behavioral profiles for 17 major galactic civilizations, including projected life cycle models, expansion patterns, and probable collapse scenarios. Elena's tone remained conversational, despite discussing the potential end of their entire way of life. Collapse scenarios? Corex Prime's voice carried a note of uncertainty that Vex 9 had never heard before. Well, Admiral, empires built on conquest and resource extraction tend to follow predictable patterns. Growth phase, consolidation phase, overextension phase, internal fragmentation phase, and finally, dissolution phase. According to the Protectorate's models, the hegemony is currently transitioning from overextension to internal fragmentation. New data appeared on the displays showing rebellion activity in outer sectors, resource shortages, communication delays, and administrative failures that painted a picture of an empire slowly eating itself from within. These projections are theoretical, Corex Prime insisted. Are they? Admiral, when was the last time you received accurate resource reports from Sector 12? How many administrative requests are currently backlogged in your bureaucratic systems? What percentage of your enforcement fleets are operating at full capacity? Silence. Elena's voice softened slightly. The thing is, Admiral, the Protectorate learned something important about galactic civilizations. They don't need to be destroyed. They need to be guided toward better choices. And sometimes, that guidance comes in the form of a wake-up call. What kind of wake-up call? Vex 9 asked, dreading the answer. The kind that demonstrates the difference between conquest and cooperation. Zinth, dear, are you still monitoring those energy readings? Yes, ma'am. Sir, they're off the scale now. Perfect. Gentlemen, ladies, distinguished others, you're about to witness something that hasn't been seen in the galaxy for over 200,000 years. The Terran Protectorate is coming out of dormancy. The main display shifted to show not just Kepler 442b, but a three-dimensional map of the local galactic arm. As they watched, points of light began activating across hundreds of star systems, forming a network that spanned thousands of light-years. Sweet merciful void, Navigation Officer Crix breathed. The Protectorate, Elena explained while the display continued expanding, didn't build one defensive system. They built thousands. Every habitable world in a 50,000 light-year radius has been prepared, monitored, and integrated into a comprehensive defensive network that treats entire spiral arms as tactical units. Admiral Corex Prime stared at the display, showing the true scope of what they had stumbled into. This is impossible. Our surveys would have detected installations of this magnitude. Would they? Admiral, your surveys look for energy signatures, manufactured structures, and technological emissions. The Protectorate built their systems to be indistinguishable from natural phenomena until activated. Every star in this network has been modified at the quantum level. Every planet contains self-replicating manufacturing systems. Every asteroid belt includes dormant defensive platforms. The tactical computer began calculating threat assessments and promptly shut down with what could only be described as electronic panic. The numbers were simply too large for standard military analysis protocols. "What do you want from us?" Corex Prime asked, his voice carrying the weight of someone who suddenly understood how small they really were. "What I want, Admiral, is very simple. I want the hegemony to evolve." "Evolve how?" Elena's image gestured to the expanding network display. The Protectorate learned that sustainable galactic civilization requires cooperation, not conquest. They built this network not to destroy potential threats, but to offer them a choice: continue the cycle of expansion and collapse, or join something better. Join what, exactly? A galactic community based on mutual benefit rather than subjugation. Trade instead of tribute. Cooperation instead of conquest. The Protectorate has been waiting a very long time for the right moment to make this offer. Vex 9's tactical mind began processing the implications. "And if we refuse?" Elena's smile carried the warmth of someone discussing gardening techniques. "Then the network demonstrates why the Protectorate never needed to conquer anyone. Why would you take territory by force when you can simply make force irrelevant?" "Demonstration how?" "Oh, nothing dramatic. No explosions, no destroyed fleets, no conquering armies. The network simply adjusts things. Hyperspace routes become unreliable in aggressive territories. Communication systems develop interesting glitches when used for military coordination. Resource extraction equipment suffers mysterious efficiency losses. Weapons systems experience unexpected maintenance requirements." The display showed predictive models of what such adjustments would mean for the hegemony. Supply lines disrupted, communication networks compromised, military capabilities degraded, and economic systems slowly grinding to a halt. "You would cripple our entire civilization," Corex Prime accused. "No, Admiral. We would force your civilization to cripple itself. The network doesn't attack. It simply makes aggression increasingly expensive and cooperation increasingly profitable. Eventually, even the most conquest-minded species discover that collaboration yields better results than domination." Elena's control interface pulsed with new patterns, and the display showed shipping routes, trade networks, communication hubs, and resource distribution systems that could support galactic civilization without requiring military enforcement. The Protectorate spent 200,000 years perfecting post-scarcity economics, conflict resolution protocols, and sustainable development models. They didn't go dormant because they were defeated. They went dormant because they completed their work and decided to wait for the galaxy to catch up. "And now," Vex 9 asked, "Now, Commander, the galaxy has enough spacefaring civilizations to make community worthwhile. The network is fully operational, the archives are accessible, and frankly, I could use some help with the administrative workload." Elena laughed, and for the first time it sounded genuinely amused rather than ominous. "Do you have any idea how complicated it is to manage defensive systems across 50,000 star systems? The paperwork alone could crush a small moon." Admiral Corex Prime studied the displays showing the true scope of what they had encountered. An empire that spanned half the galaxy, defensive capabilities that made military conquest obsolete, and administrative systems that could support galactic civilization without oppression. "What would membership in this community require?" he asked carefully. "Transparency, cooperation, and a genuine commitment to mutual benefit. The network provides resources, technology, and support, but only to civilizations willing to abandon conquest-based expansion. It's quite simple, really. Play nicely with others, and everyone benefits. Continue being aggressive, and discover how expensive aggression becomes when the universe itself disagrees with your methods. The bridge fell silent, except for the gentle hum of systems trying to process information that challenged everything they thought they knew about galactic politics. "I need to consult with the High Command," Corex Prime said finally. "Of course, Admiral. Take all the time you need. The Protectorate has waited this long. A few more days won't matter. But I should mention that 17 other major civilizations received similar offers this morning. First come, first served on the good membership benefits." Elena's transmission ended with the kind of cheerful goodbye typically reserved for neighbors discussing fence repairs, leaving the bridge crew staring at displays that showed their entire understanding of the galaxy had just been turned upside down. Vex 9 looked at the tactical screen showing Elena's simple line in the dirt, now understanding that it represented not just a boundary, but an invitation to something larger than conquest, older than empires, and more powerful than any military force in the galaxy. "Sir," Zinth asked quietly, "what do we do now?" Admiral Corex Prime studied the expanding network display one final time. "Now, Officer Zinth, we learn what it means to be neighbors instead of conquerors." The line Elena had drawn in the dirt remained visible on the tactical display. 20 meters of disturbed soil that had just changed the course of galactic history. And somewhere on the surface of Kepler 442b, a former military engineer turned galactic administrator was probably wondering if her new job description included diplomatic relations with 17 major civilizations. It was, Vex 9 Fidus, Police, Voidsnin reflected, going to be an interesting transition period.